Hello again, everyone. Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be sharing my thoughts on the astrological community part 2. Some of you may remember some time ago I did a video talking about the astrological community, sharing my thoughts on it. And in this segment, I'm going to do another video that is connected with that. So anyway. Well, first thing off, in recent time, I do believe astrology has improved in its popularity. According to one source, MotherJones.com, it is stated that basically astrology is given more believability, at least to some degree. And however, though, it does state on that website that basically that people that have more science education will give it less credibility and credence to those that have less science education, and the people of less science education may find it more plausible on average. Now, if you look at this superficially, it may suggest or intimate that quote-unquote smarter people maybe give it less credibility, but what you have to remember too is that, and here's another perception on this, is that the people that, you could talk about perhaps people that are college educated, even I would say that probably people that are college educated would probably give it less credibility. And that being said, well, you have to remember that at least, I'm not sure the exact numbers, but I'm sure at the very least in the vast majority of colleges that astrology is not an accredited course, is not a course that is in there. And I think what happens is people are so quick to debunk or even denounce the subject of astrology. You'll have a lot of professors, I believe, that are college professors, and even people, teachers in high school, that might be saying, well, it's just a bunch of rubbish, it's preposterous, there's no way it can exist. So what happens is people will listen to that, and they'll listen to people that really they're like science educators or what have you, and they'll just blow it off and say, well, this doesn't exist. And the thing about it is, I think if they were to make astrology compulsory subject to learn, or make it something that could be a compulsory course in college. I'm not saying that it would be mandatory to take the course, but make sure, like if you had all colleges say have that course available, where you would actually have the option to take it, then I think you would have more people naturally that may think that astrology could be possibly plausible and give it more believability. However, going back to the MotherJones.com blog, and it said, according to NSF, that 55%, this is based on 2012 data though, 55% of Americans say that astrology is, quote, not at all scientific, end quote, which of course one could surmise that 45% of Americans may say that it is at least somewhat scientific. Remember that this is based on 2012 data. The number could be higher now. I would not be astonished if this was closer to a 50-50 split, given that it's 2018 now at the time of this video. Now, going back, stating this again, making it, if they can make astrology, if they can make it compulsory for astrology to at least be an option as a course at colleges, and if they did it in all colleges, I'm sure college people could give it more believability, because they would see this as an option to learn, and they could see where it could actually be more voracious than maybe what they may think otherwise. Now, the thing about this is, you talk about really a wide divergence of ways to learn astrology. YouTube Astrology has certainly opened more people up to the subject. People like prolific YouTube astrologers Alyssa Sharp and David Lawrence Palmer, aka the Leo King, inspired a lot of people, I believe, to start being visual educators, so to speak, on the subject. Alyssa Sharp had inspired me with her great whimsical quality, and of course very knowledgeable, obviously shares very profuse knowledge of the subject in her videos. And The thing about this too is that also remember that the YouTube videos, they could actually be beneficial for people that are either blind, that they have, or they have, something where their vision is impaired or deteriorating, where they don't really have the, really 100% vision, and they could actually they could listen to the videos, because the majority, I believe, of the YouTube astrology videos do have audio in them. So people that have difficulty with eyesight and they would prefer to learn just by listening and hearing, that could be an avenue for those people and an outlet for them to assimilate the subject of astrology, and perhaps very deeply. The thing about this too is that and I don't have anything against the guy, I mean, as a person or anything. I think he's very smart, very proficient in science. But Bill, really, you could say, very renowned. I mean, Bill Nighy, the science guy. I mean, he has obviously been very adamant about debunking astrology, but unfortunately, that this is because I believe this is based on superficial knowledge and not understanding that Western astrology is based on precession of the equinox. It's more of a moving zodiac in contrast to the stagnant one, which of course that is Vedic astrology. And he'll be, he had that one video where I'm sure many of you may have seen it, where he had stated something like, well, I'm supposed to be a Sagittarius, but this constellation, it's actually in Scorpio when I was born. Well, I mean, that was because he's going by the Vedic astrology and not the Western, which is based on precession. So really, what the thing about this is, part of the reason, like, you have people that are very cynical and skeptical of the subject is because if you have someone like a Bill Nighy, the science guy, that is very prominent in the science, or he's somebody that's famous, obviously, and many people know him, and when someone like him will debunk or perhaps even denounce the subject, I believe he even stated that it could be evil, a lot of people obviously are going to listen to him. They're going to give him credibility. They're obviously going, on average, people will probably listen to him over me because he has much more, fame than I possibly will probably ever have, and he is more well known. Obviously, he's going to come up a lot more in a Google search, of course, as opposed to me. And if or the vast majority of YouTube astrologers, at least or people doing astrology, he will probably come up more than practically any of those people. So that being said, the thing about it is, I would like to see, Bill Nighy. It would be interesting to see him square off in a debate against what I would consider practically a venerable astrologer, such as an Alan Oken or a Liz Green, and see what would happen in that. I mean, many of you may know he had been involved in a debate, which was a fairly popular debate. It was the debate over creation and evolution. And the thing about that is, he can, most people believe, at least the scientists that gave their opinion on who won, the majority, I believe, thought that he defeated Ken Ham in that debate. Now, he is very obviously opposed and adversarial to the subject of astrology. I would just like to see, well, if he could, I mean, him going up against an astrologer in debate, since he's obviously so adamant about it not existing and not having any credibility. But anyway, the thing about this is, when you talk about people in the astrology community, many people in the astrology community, unfortunately, could be condemned by people that will, these Christian people that will say, okay, in the Bible it says, well, it rebukes the belief of astrology. But the three wise men may have actually been astrologers, so there may be a contradiction right there. And then, and what bothers me about a lot of these people that will be condemning others for the belief in astrology, a lot of those people are committing what the Bible would consider sins as it is. I mean, people that are having, of course, premarital sex or having sex on the sly, on the side, so to speak, while being married, extracurricular activities, so to speak, sexually. That, though, I mean, all sins are viewed, if I'm not mistaken, they're perceived the same by the man upstairs, by God. So those are, I mean, that's what people have to really look at and understand. If you're going to persecute someone or rebuke someone for that study of astrology, you have to look at yourself too, of course, prior to doing so. Now, the thing about this is, going back into the community now for astrology. Now, astrology, of course, like almost any, I mean, virtually any group, any subject, any kind of group of that's associated with a particular subject or science or what have you, you are going to have cliques in it, of course. And the thing about it is, many of you may have remembered that I had done a video some time ago, and it was about, in my opinion, what the top 10 YouTube astrologers were. Now, at this point in time, at the time of this video, it has close to 2,500 views. Well, what happened was, okay, out of the 10 people, well, three of the people actually reached out to me and thanked me. I would say 3 if I remember correctly. Now, that means there were 7 remaining. So based on that, it's like 7 or near 7 did not ever say, well, reach out and say, oh, thanks or anything for it, or, show, respond and at least talk to me about it. The thing about it is, now, I mean, I didn't do it to get, a pat on the back from others, from, the people that I mentioned in the video, in my opinion, who I thought were the top 10 YouTube astrologers. But thing about it is, I mean, the way I look at it is this. If you had 7 people that didn't respond after I did that video, and you had close to 2,500 views on it at the time I'm making this video, something tells me at least one of those 7 people, maybe even 2, actually had at least known about it, whether they actually saw the video or were stated, or it was stated to them by somebody else that they were mentioned in the video. And the thing about that is, it just would be nice if people would at least be more responsive. And I think a lot of it is, a lot of it's attributed to the fact that, I mean, you have snobbery in virtually any field. I understand that this wasn't an official award ceremony, right, or anything like that, but at the same time, people can at least acknowledge something. If they know about something, at least just drop a line, say thank you. It's not an arduous or strenuous task to do so. Now, the thing about it is, at the same time, I know I'm far from infallible in terms of how I can interact in the astrological community, because, as many of you may know, of course, I have my comments blocked. I can do more maybe to ingratiate myself, so to speak, in that community. So I do realize and understand that. Now, the thing about it is, too, and people have to remember that, it's not about, I mean, you could have, the cliques and everything in astrology like you have everywhere else, but people have to remember that it's not about, you connecting with people just because, say astrologers that have, they do the videos, of course, they have flamboyant background graphics. That's all fine and everything. But as I've stated in other videos, that it's not about the background graphics, the stellar background graphics in a video. It's about the background of the astrologer. So anyway, now, another thing too is that what I would recommend, as far as people that want to, get involved and ingratiate themselves in groups, and they want to interact with others that are interested in the subject of astrology or enamored with it. I mean, there's, numerous things one could do. Of course, there's numerous Facebook astrology groups, including the Astro Codex, 12th House Astrology group, the group I started, the YouTube Astrology group, And also there's one called Astrology of the Face, which is a lot of fun. Now, and also, I mean, a forum that one could interact with other people that are interested in astrology is astrologyweekly.com. And the only other thing what I would like to say is that when the thing about it is when you're talking about people in a community and you're with in other whether it's other astrologers, YouTube astrologers, or what have you, that of course you're always going to have differences. I mean, of course, you know, you got two of the main types of astrology, Vedic and Western. You're always going to have the perpetual debate and battle regarding that with others. But remember that you can always disagree without being disputatious. The thing about it is, it's like, for example, like when I talked about in previous videos about the astrology and evil, that I mean, I basically stated that, you know, there may be certain signs and aspects that could give a little more propensity for evil, but I'm not really saying that either there's any signs flatly or aspects that will definitely give evil tendencies or nefarious behavior. You know, somebody might think, well, there's no such thing as that, or there's no such thing as any aspects that could give that propensity for that, or signs that might increase your prevalence or be drawn toward that kind of behavior. That's all fine as an example, but at the same time that people have to remember to respect. I mean, we all have to respect each other's opinions. Just because you say something, you have a different perception on something in astrology, doesn't necessarily going to make it factual. It just means that's your belief on that particular proponent or that part of astrology, that particular subject that is associated with astrology. Now, and the thing is, anyway, that's pretty much all that I wanted to state as far as the astrological community. And I think, I mean, astrology, of course, is obviously very much, it's growing. You have a strong proliferation of YouTube astrologers. I mean, you could also, I mean, naturally, I wanted to talk as well. There's one other thing I wanted to get, is that there's a website called meetup.com. It's meetup.com, and I know on there's a thing for astrology groups where people can meet up and talk about astrology. People that are enamored with the subject can go to various places and meet up with other like-minded people connected with it. So that's another way where where people can interact with others that do believe in astrology and are truly enjoy it. And anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for my thoughts on the astrological community part 2. Stay tuned next time, where I'm going to be giving you my Cancer May 2018 horoscope forecast. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person astrologically speaking based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.